I've got a lot of free time, so what do? So I went to Paris for a week, got an Airbnb, and thought, okay, what if I build something like Cerebra, but what if I made it open source? And that was sort of what I was thinking. So I created Xavier at that time. So a little bit about Cerebra, so you understand like where the Xavier comes from. The name Cerebra, if you're a comic book fan or like a big nerd of comic book stuff, Cerebro there are two different versions of Cerebro. They're basically this computer that Dr. Charles Xavier uses to like reach like mutants, like control their minds, right, throughout the universe. It amplifies his power. And I thought it was like a good like metaphor for MDM controlling endpoints. So that's where Cerebra came from. And I thought, well, Xavier could be like kind of a similar, little theme there. And this was Cerebra. It was a really simple app. Like the idea was like really with like simplicity, simple UI. So that's what I was going for. And I thought, well, okay, I had a small team, 5 people, 3 developers, including myself, who built this. And I thought, if it's just me, at least initially in an open source app, what can I do to make it even simpler than this? And I thought about my work as a client platform engineer using MicroMDM, and I thought, well, okay, maybe if I don't build the MDM server, like that'll save some time. And if I only build maybe a front end, that'll help as well. So I thought about like the different pieces that Cerebra required. So there was an MDM server, there was an agent server. Those two were both in Java. And then I had written the Swift agent for macOS, and also a similar for Windows, a C# agent. But then there also was a web app, right? So there was a full stack web app. There was a back end in Node.js, a front end in Vue, then finally a data store, which was Google Firestore. So I thought about that. Okay, MicroMDM, NanoMDM are great. Jesse, Victor, Corey, Graham, people who contribute to that are way smarter than I am, so I don't have to go rewrite like an MDM server. When it comes to the agent and the agent server, I sort of thought about Apple's lead with making the operating system secure by not really like allowing a lot of like processes, like root processes. So I kind of thought, well, maybe I'll rely on the query responses from MDM and not even bother with an agent. So I'll skip that, and that'll save time. So that actually brought it down just to like 3 little components. One is the database, which I chose MongoDB, and then a back end and a front end, Node.js and React. And I think like a lot of open source projects that sort of like came to be in the Mac space, a lot of them were projects that someone wanted to learn a programming language or a technology, and they're like, okay, let me build something. Well, that's kind of true here. I didn't really know React, and I wanted to get into React very deeply, so that's why I chose React. So this works like in tandem with MicroMDM or NanoMDM. So in the spirit of those two applications, Xavier is not a product. So just to make sure that's clear with everyone. So you can like certainly ping me about questions, but there's no guaranteed support. I'm not selling this to anyone. This is totally free. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to give you a quick tour. Take the slides off for a moment. And let's see here. I'm going to start here on the GitHub, and I just want to show very quickly. First of all, you have to have MicroMDM or NanoMDM. That's like, without those, Xavier does nothing. You have to have an MDM server. And also, like a little caveat with this is still a very early project, so all of my testing is all on MicroMDM. The intention is for it to be compatible with both, but right now it's like I'm only really focused on MicroMDM. There are 2 getting starting guides. One is for creating the backend server, and there are a series of steps you have to sort of follow. They're pretty self-explanatory, but if you follow them in order, like it's actually really easy to get it set up and working. So if you just sort of follow that, that's great. You have to install Node.js, of course, run npm install. This one I want to talk about a little bit just because this probably will change. It'll be gone in the future, but like temporarily, when you first run the app, you have to have a user account. So what you would do is you would go to this file, and you see here line 6, 7, 8, and you have to uncomment this line, and that exposes a register route, okay? And then at that point, you can send a post command to actually create your first user account, okay? So then after you do that, you would comment that line back out. If for some reason you didn't comment it out, that's actually fine too, because like someone could technically create a user account, but it's actually set up so if one administrator exists, it'll create audit accounts only, so it can't actually control devices. So, but that will change in the future. That'll be gone. It's like a little placeholder, sort of get you started. But yeah, so once you do all of that, this backend also serves as the webhook for MDM. So if you're running MicroMDM, this would be your webhook server for MicroMDM. And very similar, but actually a lot easier, there are a few steps for the front end. The first one being create your backend. You only have one environment variable to set up. You install dependencies, run the build, and deploy. So it's easy as that. Initially, I thought, well, maybe I'll actually do this during like the demo, but it takes a little bit too long. So I probably will post eventually a YouTube video that shows step by step if you really want to see like each step like laid out. So that'll be available later. Okay, so the app itself. Is that it? Yeah. This is what you get when you first log in. And I want to show you, first of all, this dashboard. So you can sort of customize it to like whatever you want to see about your endpoints. And let's say, for example, we're going to look at Mac. And let's say compliance status. I probably will have additional options in the future. But right now, for like a placeholder, I threw up 3 as an example. So let's say file vault encryption. You want to know if your devices are encrypted. So you can add that to your dashboard. And now you can see across your fleet which devices are encrypted or not. If you click on like this little, it's kind of hard to see when it's colored, you'll get like the list of devices that are not encrypted. Let's see here. How do I go back? I'll do it this way. There's a bug if you refresh. You didn't lose your dashboard, but you have to refresh. Okay. Now let's add a few more just for fun. Let's do, let's say the iPad OS version. We'll use that one. And you'll notice in the bottom right-hand corner for each card, like a little tiny laptop or a little tablet or a little phone. That way you can sort of distinguish, if you're on, iPad or iPhone or a Mac. And also, if you want to look at, let's say, Mac OS, like Mac app versions. So what you see here, every Mac that you have enrolled, every application installed will actually be in this list automatically. So if you search for, I don't know, some weird name, if you don't have it, it won't show up. But if you do have it, let's say Firefox, and actually I'll add a couple. Let's do Xcode. Okay, now you have the app versions across like your fleet for the various apps you have. So it's really useful, like especially like on a day you're patching Chrome, you can sort of see like how things are going with that. Okay, so that's the dashboard. I'll go into the devices section now, and of course in my test environment I only have a few devices, so there's not a whole lot here. This Mac Mini is at home in Hawaii. But I'll show you real quick the data you're getting. Again, this is all through MDM, query responses, security info command, things like that. There's no agent, so all the data comes from MDM. So you have the basic hardware information, network information, details about the operating system. Down here you have all the apps that are installed in their version. You have a list of the profiles installed. Now on this one, it's just the enrollment profile. But if you click into that, you can get the actual details of the profile. You can also delete the profile from here, but of course the enrollment profile, if you delete that, then it's actually out of MDM, so we won't do that just yet. List of certificates. There's an MDM log, which I'll show later, but you can see what happens is when you push an MDM command, it gets logged, also who requested it, and then the response, it shows like, okay, actually the device got it and actually responded to the command. If you got like a not now response, it'll show that as well. This way you can sort of like know if it was successful or not. Up here, you have your normal like MDM commands you can push through the MDM server. And I'm actually going to go to, I have a VM here. Let's see, PASSWORD. Yep, that worked. Let me go to that device. That's this one. And also, if there are software updates, then those will also show up down here as well. This one's not been updated for a while. But let's do a few commands. I think that'll be kind of fun. So let's, first of all, let's make sure we can reach it. So I'll do a device inventory update. Now we'll just refresh. OK, that worked. Let's do, let's rename it. Let's just call it, let's call it Mac Adduct VM. So we'll send that command. I'm also going to do, I'll do another command too. Notice remote desktop is disabled, which is probably a good thing, but let's say we needed to enable it. We'll go ahead and do that as well. So we've enabled those. There's sometimes a race condition, so it might not update automatically, but I'll just do a refresh and check. It did update automatically. So notice the name was changed. This is now enabled. If we go to the MDM log, we'll see those two commands just went through. Okay. Again, if there was a not now response or no response, it actually will say that. Like it'll be highlighted in red, and it'll like sort of flag that. So it's actually like visible. We could also demonstrate just for kicks, as everyone loves like erasing and locking Macs, right? I'm not sure why, but we like that. So let's say that's actually my phone number. Let's not use that one. And then let's say you are locked. So we'll go ahead and lock this device, and that's actually this VM. You can see something is happening. So right away, you should see if we refresh in the MDM log. The pin, I figured, I might change this later, but I figured it's best just to have it auto-generated. But I might make it an option that you could just like add the pin if you want to. So it created this pin, 507137. Also, you could come here. Notice we now have this unlock pin. You can click to view. And I've actually tried this a few times, so you have the entire history of like the pins here. So if we did that, 507137. And now we're back in business with our VM. So I'll show one final thing about this. It's always important to be able to push configuration profiles. And those live here. I have one now. And you can upload them like two ways. One, you can add one this way and just like grab the file and add it. And then later you can assign it to the device. Or right from the device page, we can go ahead and add a profile this way. If it's already been like uploaded, you'll see it here, and you can just sort of like click on it. Or we can upload one. And I have one actually for the occasion. Let's see, PASSWORD. Let that start up. OK, so we have this config profile. This is like the basic information. You can see it sets the Firefox homepage to Mac Addict UK. I decided when I created this that, just like not reinventing the wheel with an MDM server, I also didn't want to like reinvent the wheel with creating config profiles. So this config profile was created by Eric Berglund's profile creator. You could use, Apple Configurator. You can use iMazing, whatever you use. You don't have to actually create it in like this app. So I'm going to hit install profile. Got confirmation that it's now being installed. And I think if we go here, I guess we can see it here. Yeah, it's already here now. So if we were to launch Firefox, we should get a familiar website. And there it is. Okay, so just like that. And again, if we refresh, it's nice if you have faster internet if you do this. So if you refresh, then you'll see like the log, you'll see that it was successful. And there we have it here. And the profile here is installed, okay? And then, let's see, we have until, what time is this end? It's like 25, right, I think? Is 25 after? Yes. Okay, thank you. About users, notice here it says requested by, and it's my name, because I requested that it be installed. Right now, I'm the only user, and I have administrator privileges. So there is also, it just autofills that. You could also create an auditor account, and an auditor would see all the data like that's available, but they would have no ability to push profiles or MDM commands at all. So, and you can have multiple administrators. And sort of like the future plan of this is to have a consensus model. So you would have to have multiple administrators. You probably wouldn't create them this way. You probably would create them automatically with like a SAML, setup. That's sort of like the long-term goal. But this consensus model, what would happen here, just refresh that. That's a little bug. What would happen here is if Jeffery Abbott would have come along and said, okay, do this lock device with PIN, there would also be an approval column, right? And another administrator who's not Jeffery Abbott would have to approve that before the action goes through. So when I created Cerebra, we had something similar, and we used like the Twilio API for text messaging. So like everyone else would get a text message, and you have to approve with a PIN for it to go through. So I probably will include a Twilio option, or you could just do it like straight in the app as well. So, so there will be that consensus model, which is not built in just yet into the app. I think that's mostly what I have. So, in a nutshell, this basically is creating like a GUI front end that you could use with MicroMDM or NanoMDM. You will notice there's an application spot here, but it's just a placeholder. There's nothing exciting about that just yet. I'm working through the differences. I'm trying to figure out like philosophically if the file repo will stay on the MDM server or in a separate server, like depending on how I want to do it with like Nano and Micro might be slightly different there. So that's still just a placeholder. But yeah, that's sort of where the project is at. And it's been a lot of fun like working on it and getting started. And this is what you do when you get Rift and you have plenty of time on your hands. So yeah, that's the project. So I guess we have about 10 minutes, and I'm going to surprise the sound guy. I think we can do a Q&A if anyone has any questions, if you have a microphone. Though it's an open source project, so if you have a queue, the A is almost always going to be, pull request, right? So, while he's getting that ready, let me just show, where do I have it here? To make it easier, if you'd like, this is the QR code for the GitHub repo, or also the URL is there as well. If we have any questions, if not, that's fine as well.
It's for the recording.
Oh, fair enough. For the recording. So I'm very interested in this for home stuff. Mm-hmm. Because I am the IT manager for my family, as I'm sure a lot of us are. So my question is, where are you hosting yours? Where would you suggest is a reasonable place to host? Because there are so many options.
Yeah, that's actually a really great question. When I first got involved with IT, I had to learn Monkey and also SaltStack, and I did exactly that. I managed my home computers first before I actually got paid to do it. In this case, of course, you know, MicroMDM, NanoMDM, they're completely free to use. This is also completely free to use. The only thing as far as like money that would go into it is you need to have like an Apple enterprise developer, or even a regular developer start actually now these days. So $100 a month or for a year to Apple to cover that. But then also whatever you host it on, right? So in my case, it's all Google Cloud Platform. So the back end is, well, not all. The back end is running just like a regular compute engine with actually very minimal like specs. Like it's like whatever the micro instance is. And then the front end is actually living in Google App Engine, so like almost like a serverless, you know, but it could be anything. It could be anywhere. So yeah, yeah. What could be expensive if you're not careful is actually the database. So if you're using a managed database, like for example, if you're using AWS, this requires MongoDB. And in AWS, the equivalent would be DocumentDB. And that actually can be quite expensive if you're not careful. In my case, though, I'm using a MongoDB Atlas because they give you a free like database you can use. So if you don't have like a ton of databases, just use Atlas, and then you can just have an Atlas account, you know, MongoDB Atlas. So that actually works out quite well. If you know MongoDB well, though, you could also just run it on your own server. Community edition is actually very easy to do. So yeah, so that's possible. And all of mine, all the servers, both servers, they're using Let's Encrypt. So yeah, which is perfectly fine. Just you have to know every few months you have to renew it. That's all. So. Yeah, but it's totally free to do it that way. Yeah, great question. Yeah, thank you. I saw another hand somewhere. It's so dark in here, but there was one back there.
I was just mostly curious, like what are some future ideas of features you're hoping to add to it? For example, like NanoMDM, MicroMDM, that's mostly just the MDM stuff, but there's other projects that are doing DDM stuff. Are you planning on, you know, integrating that later on or building on top of that?
Yeah, absolutely. This is still a very early project, and right now I'm the only contributor. But yeah, I mean, I have lots of ideas and certainly welcome like pull requests. But to speak to a few of those, I do in the future plan to support DDM. I think that's actually really important because I've had to manage patch OS for a long time, and it's always been a nightmare. I think there's actually a talk about that, like, or there was one. So yeah, that DDM is really important, I think. The consensus model I mentioned, I think that's actually really important because any security person I've talked to, they've always brought that up. They don't like the idea of one person being able to, like, you know, wreak havoc on corporate endpoints. I do plan on, you may have noticed when like devices were listed, it said something like platform, and it had like the little Apple logo. So that's sort of a hint. When I built Cerebra, we fully supported Android. So I do think in the future, I probably will build an Android server. So there may be Android as well. I have a really good friend who actually has a lot of experience building Windows MDM servers. And I'm trying to talk, I don't want to do it myself. I'm trying to talk him into building it like an open source Windows thing. So that's sort of, it's not, nothing is definite, but I don't really see it as limited to Apple only forever. It's a good place to start, but I think, you know, there are other operating systems. I've also built in the past just like a POC of controlling Chrome devices. So you're really using like, you're actually using like the Google API. You have to have like G Suite or Workplace, whatever it's called, Workspace. But you would like manage them here the same way you would manage like any other device. So that's sort of my mind as well. Right now, of course, you saw the applications page was empty. That's definitely a future. That's probably like the nearest term future thing. I still haven't built out like the ability to store the file vault keys. So I'm still sort of like testing that right now, but that also will be coming very soon as well. Yeah, good question like that.
And just as a follow-up, I haven't looked at the MicroMDM project, but if there are things that it hasn't been able to implement or can't do, which been always told that like on day one of WWDC, they tend to almost implement all the new stuff or within the week. Would you be looking to supplement and contribute to those projects so that you can then take it back to Xavier and expose some of that stuff?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, the answer is yes. I mean, there's a whole community of people, I think, who want MicroMDM, or especially, I mean, I think the real future is NanoMDM. MicroMDM is sort of like the precursor of NanoMDM. They want to be able to support everything, but the thing is, when it comes to like what you support and don't support, MicroMDM or NanoMDM, I can't even say it, NanoMDM can accept like raw, like plist commands, right? So there's almost, in my mind, I could be wrong about this, but in my mind, there's almost nothing it really can't support if you create the proper plist, right? So with that in mind, as it is already, because you saw you can like sort of push your own config profiles, there's really nothing that I think you really couldn't do. The only thing that's sort of changed is when like actual MDM commands like are updated. Those have to be added, of course. But yeah, I do watch WWDC and try to keep up to date. And if there are new MDM commands, as long as like they can be pushed, I don't think it's really dependent on MicroMDM or NanoMDM because they're just sort of transporting that command to the Apple server anyways. So like I think that's fine. Were there other questions? No? Okay. Well, we're about 5 minutes early, but I will stick around if you want to come talk about it. That's perfectly fine. So thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it. Good.